Hello and welcome to the Flix Forum podcast, where each episode we go back and we look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. This episode we have Netflix 247th film from 2020. It's the Turkish drama One Way to Tomorrow, or Yarına Tek Bilet. It's directed by Ozan Açıktan. It stars Metin Akdulger, Dilan, Cicek, Deniz, and Tevfik. Kartal. I'm Jesse. I'm writing solo. Hope you're excited for this one. Another international film that we're getting through from 2020. If you want to check this film out and you haven't seen it, give us a pause now. Come back a little bit later on because we are going to go through and spoil little bits and pieces. This one's probably not going to be too long an episode because there's not an awful lot to talk about, but I'm going to start with the fast flicks where we do a quick summary of what the film is all about. So this one is literally a guy and a girl meet on a train and share their stories. That's as vague as I'll be to start off with because, it's a story about characters, about who they are as people and this destination that they're traveling to on this train, I guess. And I'm going to have to talk about it, but to start off with, that's where we're at. And we're going to talk a little bit about how this one ended up on Netflix. So this one, it's the first branded original film out of Turkey on Netflix, and it's actually a remake of the 2014 Swedish film called How to Stop a Wedding. That title gives away a lot more than One Way to Tomorrow, I guess, because as I sort of touched on, both these people are going to a wedding, and that title gives away a lot of motives of the characters as well. So I guess it's nice that they've changed the title One Way to Tomorrow because it adds a bit more about the themes about them changing as people. And I guess if we look at the actual title in Turkish, the literal translation of Yarına Tek Bilet, it's one way or a single ticket to tomorrow. So much better than that How to Stop a Wedding of the original title, I think. In Spanish, it's called Train to My Destination. In Portuguese, it's called Destiny Express. In Greek, it's called To Tomorrow, No Return. In Polish, it's a journey towards tomorrow. And in Vietnamese, it's a train ticket to love. So obviously all play on that idea of love, train, destiny, tomorrow, moving forward. It gives a lot about the idea of what this film's talking about, I guess, as well. There is a scene in this film that was a little bit surprising to me. So Turkey being a Muslim country, they have some liberal policies, I guess. And one of those we see in this train is that no unmarried couples can share a compartment on a train. And that's actually part of this film as well. So that was a bit of an interesting difference in culture that was seen in this film. Dilan, Cicek, Deniz, who plays one of our main characters in this film, our main female character, she was actually crowned Miss Universe of Turkey in 2014, and then represented Turkey at the Miss Universe 2014 pageant as well. So very interesting that we've got a model turned actress, and she does a fairly good job in this film, I would say, from my own opinion. This did hit Netflix on the 19th of June 2020. It's filmed in Kütahya, Izmir, and Ankara in Turkey, and it did win an award. It won the award at the Ayakil Gazette TV Star Awards for Dilan, Cicek, Deniz for Best Actress, and the film was also nominated at the same awards for Best Movie. What are critics and audiences saying about this film? On Rotten Tomatoes, this doesn't have a percentage yet. It only has 4 reviews. They're all fresh, so that's a positive. The audience, it sits at 83%, so that's fresh from audiences. That's on more than 50 ratings. On IMDb, it sits at a 6.3 out of 10 on 13,000 ratings, so fairly positive. Letterboxd, it's a little bit lower at a 2.2 out of 5 on a bit over 6,000 ratings, but it's been logged by 11,000 people. So generally mixed bag, fairly on the leaning towards the positive end. For me, this is a small indie film. It's not bad. I think it sort of suffers where there are other films that do exactly the same thing better, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about that later on. The characters in this one, there's really 2 characters we follow in this train ride. We've got Ali, who's the male. He's a lawyer. We find out he's got a heart condition, and this wedding that the 2 characters are traveling to, he's the ex of the bride of this wedding, and he's very forthcoming, likes conversation, likes asking questions, but probably a little bit delusional about how to interact properly. And that leads us to Layla, who is the other companion he meets on the train, I guess, and she's lost her bag on the train. She's not into conversation as much, and she's the ex of the groom that they're going to this wedding to, and she has a bit more attitude because this ex of hers, she was with him for 6 years, and she feels let down by this guy because he didn't want to get married, but then she got this package with wedding invites for him and his girlfriend, which is, I guess, a little bit humorous, but then she got pregnant, he wasn't supportive, and I'm not too sure why she cares so much about him anymore, or why she's traveling to this wedding to stop this marriage. She has this violin with her, so she plays this violin, but it seems like she was more pushed into it by her parents because she had more of an interest in surfing, and as I mentioned with this idea of lost luggage, we'll probably talk about it a bit more, but she has this like delete button in her mind almost, where she can forget things or put things in the past and not sort of dwell on them too much, and that's something that Ali, the other guy on the train, wants to work on himself, and this is done through the conversation the two have throughout their 14-hour train trip together to head towards this wedding. The director for this one, Ozan Açıktan, this is his sixth feature. Done some shorts, some TV. In 2022, did a Turkish film called New Year's Eve. That was for Disney+. In 2021, that was, I think. And then for Netflix, he's done Last Summer and another film called Don't Leave. Both Netflix original films, which we'll probably cover at some stage on this podcast. Time to talk about some scenes. It's not that I didn't like this film, but it's hard when you've got two characters that literally spend 99% of the time on a train through conversation. There wasn't anything that necessarily stood out for me, but there were some things that sort of felt a bit awkward, and I'll talk about those, I guess. And I think, I've touched on this, the idea of them both going to this wedding, and I know with this title that we spoke about, they sort of left that out in this translation, but it was so obvious straight up that they were both going to end up, they tried to leave it a little bit ambiguous, but it was pretty clear to the audience that they were both going to be going to the same wedding. And then obviously adds a little bit of intrigue as to how they know the bride and the groom, and obviously that's all revealed as we go. I think there was Ali sort of went on this rant a little bit about his ex liking poetry. I thought that was boring. They get off the train for one moment and they sort of have this disagreement, and there just happens to be a taxi sitting there waiting for them that they can get on and then catch back up and get back on the train. I thought that was a little bit too convenient. When they're on the train, they're like playing these songs on their phones about love songs that suit each other, and that was boring as well. And there was this scene that was supposed to be the impactful scene of the film where Layla gets off the train and Ali videos her ranting about hopes and dreams and losing trust and how disappointed she is in her ex. It just didn't land for me, unfortunately. And then obviously it's pretty obvious and pretty, as an audience, that they're going to end up together. And when they do end up together and kiss and start getting into some sex, the music was so distasteful. It was just kind of awkward. And then finally, I know there's this, right at the end, they do this dance sequence down a street. And I read somewhere it's sort of from a classic film. It just didn't fit with the style of the rest of the film. So that was a little bit awkward too. All right, some themes, some ideas. I think, obviously that sometimes bad things in life can lead to a positive experience. So these two meeting each other is obviously a positive thing. But obviously you've got that idea too that they've both experienced betrayal and hurt. And it does take time to recover from this. But if you do follow the processes, you can eventually lead to growth. And, if you speak about things and you break down and realize that unhealthy relationships aren't very good, you can metaphorically, you can ditch your baggage, which they both do with their luggage, I guess. And the idea of not having to hold on to useless things too. There is a little bit of desperation in this too. Like, does desperation lead to almost begging? Like, what's the point of the two of these characters going to this wedding? I mean, obviously they need to learn why they need to move on, but, not being yourself, it's almost like this idea of revenge too. Like, are you a spiteful person, or can you sort of break away from that? And obviously too, we're on a train. We've got these two people being guided in the same direction on a train. Even if they are sitting backwards at stages and they don't like sitting backwards, they're both moving forward to try and grow and move forward from the heartbreak that they've experienced too. What did I take away from this one? I think that the breaking of this film into parts, like they had part 1, part 2, part 3, it sort of made the film feel a bit disjointed for me. And I'm not sure it was quite needed. So that's my sort of takeaway there. Questions, ponderings. Ali mentioned, as I said before, he had this heart attack when he was 14 and he's got a heart condition, takes medication. And he mentioned he had 2 weeks to live. It wasn't really brought up again. Like, was that true? Because if that is true, then the two of them being together at the end, it's only going to be for 2 weeks. So, Yeah, interesting little take. I like this line it was from the Review Geek. They said, unfortunately, this is a train that's unlikely to reach its destination with all its passengers still on board, in relation to audiences watching this film. And I kind of agree. I think the first 20 minutes or so is a bit of a slug. It's a bit awkward. You're sort of like, where's this going? It does sort of pick up a bit as it goes. But yeah, I kind of agree a little bit with that take. So let's give my final take. I think, go and see Richard Linklater's The Before Sunrise film or the other films in that series if you want to see this same idea done better. I mean, this film, it's still fine. It's fairly engaging, but it is a little bit predictable. So I'm giving it a 2 out of 5. 2 out of 5 for this one for me. We're on socials, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Give us a follow. Give us a like. The question in relation to this film is, like, would you spend 14 hours with a random in a carriage by yourself? I couldn't do it. I would feel too awkward. Could not do it. So not for me, this film, or the idea of this film. We're back again next week. Next week, another 2022 film, another international film. This one is an Indian Hindi language supernatural thriller called Bulbbul. It's directed by Anvita Dutt. It stars Tipri Dimri, Avinash Tiwari, Paoli Dam, Rahul Bose, and Parambrata Chajitri. That's what we've got next week. Interested? A thriller? Keen? Hope you are too. Give it a watch. See you next week.